Well, I want to begin by welcoming you to this study in the language of the New Testament Greek. I appreciate your taking the time to come and take a look at this short course that I've developed. I hope that you'll find it interesting and engaging and inspiring, and that you'll find the time and the desire and motivation to go ahead and pursue a study of the Greek language. The purpose of this online course is really to give you an opportunity to look at the Greek language if you may not have an opportunity to do so in some more formal setting, either in seminary or college or some place like that. This is a course that I've taught many times over the years, and I'm very happy to be able to offer it in this context as well. So I hope that you'll be able to work your way through with us. The prerequisites to the course are pretty simple. You do need to have the textbook, and the textbook is a classic text in New Testament Greek called New Testament Greek for Beginners, which was written by J. Gresham Machen way back at around the turn of the century. He was a wonderful Greek scholar and also participated heavily in many other theological concerns of his day. But this is one part of his legacy that has continued and continues to be, probably to this day, the most commonly used New Testament Greek grammar. And so I'm using this one, and you need to come buy a copy as well. You can do so readily enough. Online booksellers still have this book readily available. You can get it from used booksellers, but you want to do that before you really plow in earnest. You can certainly take a look at this first chapter, and I think you'll be able to make your way just fine without the Greek text. But I would say by the time you get to chapter 2, you want to be sure that you have that textbook available to you as well. So with that much being said, what I'm going to do, and the basic process that I'll follow throughout these lessons, is to simply look at the chapter itself. I'll put an image of the chapter on the screen, and we'll sort of comment on what is being stated there, and I'll try to explain things that may not be immediately apparent, and then we'll just go through in that way. I want to explain to you as well at this point that in order to pursue this course, you're going to need a Greek font on your computer. You may have one, but if not, my website has provided one that you can download, and you want to include that font in the font file of your particular computer. I don't think that's too difficult to do. You should be able to figure that out, and then having that Greek font available will give you the ability to type your answers to the questions and so on, and that of course is going to be essential as far as pursuing this course of study. Well, let's go ahead and get started. We'll be taking a look here at the first chapter of this, or the first page of this chapter, and introducing the Greek alphabet. So let's do that right now. All right, let's take a look at the Greek alphabet here. We're not going to pay any attention at this point to the capital letters. You don't need caps to start a sentence, which is of course where we typically use them in the English language, and so we won't really be dealing with capital letters until we get to proper names, and that won't be for a while. So for now, just focus on getting a hold of these lowercase letters. We'll be using them by far for the most part. I want you to not only learn to draw these letters, which I'll show you how to do in a moment, but also how to pronounce them. And so that's the main thing I want to do right now as we go through this page from Machen's textbook. First letter here is alpha, and of course it's pronounced A as in father. It's the A sound in an English alphabet. Beta, B, makes the sound of B. The gamma is the sound of G, as in I got it, or something like that. But bear in mind that if the gamma comes immediately before another gamma, or a kappa or a chi, then it softens the gamma, so it becomes an NG sound. So for example, the word angel in English, which we spell A-N-G, is actually in Greek A-G-G, or A-gamma-gamma, but the first gamma softens, so it becomes an N sound, angel. Delta, the sound for D. Epsilon is kind of a short E, E as in get, the eh sound. Zeta is a somewhat unusual letter. We'll learn how to make it in a moment, but you should be aware that it makes the DZ sound. Eta is considered a long E and is pronounced A as in late. Theta makes the TH sound. It's the first letter of the word theos, as in theology, and so that is one you may be familiar with. Iota makes the sound of E or I. The short sound is I, as in pit. The long sound is E, as in feet. Kappa, of course, is the letter that corresponds to K. Lambda, the letter from which we get our English L, makes an L sound, lambda, L as in lamp. The mu is the sound of M as in mother. Nu looks like a V, but makes the in sound, in as in nothing. Gz is probably the trickiest one to draw. We'll show you how to do that in a moment. And it's the makes a kind of X sound. We'll see that as we go along. The O, as in Omicron, is a short O, but it's pronounced O as in obey, the unaccented syllable. Pi makes the sound of P. You're familiar with pi, of course, from your mathematics studies way back when. Rho looks like a P, but actually makes the R sound. We'll see that, of course, very frequently. Sigma is the sound for S, and you want to make a note of the footnote here, that when the sigma is the last letter of a word, then it looks a little bit more like our standard sigma. Otherwise, it's something like an omicron with a little tail on it there. Tau, it's the sound of T. The upsilon makes the sound of the French or German oo, kind of an oo sound, but I'm not going to bother trying to say it that way. So throughout our studies, I'll simply give a kind of oo sound for that. The phi is the PH sound. It's the symbol, you know, for philosophy, the first two letters of that discipline, PH. Chi is actually kind of a guttural chi, a sort of sound, but again, I won't be working too hard at trying to maintain that particular idiom. But nevertheless, it's very important, of course. It's the first letter of the word Christos, and that's why the chi is sometimes seen as a symbol or a abbreviation for Christ, as in Xmas. That's the chi there that's at the beginning, Christmas. The psi is the symbol for psychology, starts with a PS and makes that kind of PS sound. And finally, the last letter of the Greek alphabet is omega. It makes a long O sound, O as in note. Well, even though during this course most of your writing of Greek will take place using the keyboard, at least that's the plan, it still helps to have some idea how to draw these letters. And so I'd like to take a moment or two just to go through the way in which the letters will be drawn. You're going to figure out pretty quickly, I'm no great artist, but this will give you the idea. So just going through the alphabet, starting with alpha. Alpha looks a little bit like an ichthus character, like the fish, you know, associated with Christianity. So you want to draw it about like that. It should be sitting right on top of the line there. The next letter, beta, starts below the line. It comes up above the line and then forms what amounts to a B. The next letter, gamma, starts a little above the line. It drops down, the tail goes below the line, then it comes back up looking about like that, something like a Y, except that it's the Greek gamma. Delta starts above the line. You come down, touch the line, then come back up, and the tail goes up and extends to the point that it touches the line above it. That's the delta. Epsilon, sort of a half circle there, and then you want to put a little mark right in the middle so it looks something like the English E. Zeta, the DZ sound, is kind of like a fish hook. You do a little curlicue at the top, then it comes down below the line and wraps back around, so it looks about like that. That's the zeta. Come back over here for the eta. The eta looks a little bit like an N, I suppose, but it's the long E. It is pronounced something, or it's shaped something like that. The theta, of course, is pretty easy. It's an oval, something like that. Then you have a little crosshatch right there. Iota has a bit of a curve to it. You don't put a dot on it, but it's the Greek equivalent of I. The kappa looks very much like the English K, just draw it about like that. Lambda is a slanting line with another line that comes down like that, lambda. Mu starts below the line. You come up like this and then just form what amounts to a U, but you've got this tail that starts it off there. The nu looks like a V, but it has the N sound. Next we have gazee, probably the trickiest one to make. Little curly Q at the top, then you come down like that, come back around, and then tail goes down below. I should have put this really right on the line, but you get the idea. Omicron is just simply the O, looks like that. Pi, of course you've probably done this from mathematics, looks like that. Rho is the R sound. It looks like an R, but it comes up and, or I'm sorry, it looks like a P, but it has that little appearance of a P, but it actually makes the sound of R. By the way, you'll notice when it's the first letter in a Greek word, then it's going to have the rough breather on it. So it's kind of a, as if it were an RH sound, we would say. Sigma looks like an omicron, except that it has a tail sticking off like that. If the sigma is the last letter in a word, then it's going to have the appearance of a English S with the tail going a little bit below the line. Tau looks like that, the T. Upsilon looks like a U, nothing unusual there. The Phi looks like an omicron, but it has a line drawn through it, makes the PH sound. Chi has a solid line like that, and then the other one goes down a little bit below the line, chi. Psi looks like an upsilon, but it has the line coming through it. And then finally omega, which looks like that. So as I say, you'll be drawing these occasionally, I suppose, in your work in the Greek language, but I want you to also master using the keyboard. But for now, those are the Greek letters, and we'll move on from here to the next matter. Now, you should have noticed by this time that I've provided to you a Greek font, and what I'm showing you here is the keyboard layout for that. You'd probably want to print this out and do a little practicing with it, but I thought I'd just comment briefly on the layout of these Greek letters. So if you're following along, of course, here we have the alpha. Beta is right over here where we'd find the B. Gamma is right up here. Next we have the delta located right there where you'd find the D. Epsilon is right above it where you'd find the E. The zeta is hiding right over here where the letter Z would normally be found. The eta is right up here. And next we have theta, which is right up here where you would normally find the Q. The iota is over here where the I would be expected to be found. Kappa is right there. Lambda is where you'd find the L. The mu is right here where you'd normally find the M. Nu is right there where you'd find the N. Gazee hiding right over here. And then the omicron here is there where you'd find the O. Pi right beside it there where you'd find the P. Rho, the R sound, is where you'd find a rho. The sigma, the normal sigma is right here, but as I mentioned to you, if the sigma is the last letter in a word, then you're going to find it over here, and it's going to be the capitalization of the double quote sign. So you have to just kind of pay attention to that. The tau is right up here where you'd see the T. Upsilon right here with the U. Phi is right there where you'd find the F. The chi is down here. And Psi is right there where you'd normally find the Y. And then finally the omega is right over here. So those are the letters. Now the accents, which we haven't really talked about yet, but I'll just mention them as long as we're here. And just the independent acute accent is right here, and the independent grave accent is right here. So you want to notice that. The circumflex, I find the easiest one to use is this one right here. So it's the double quote key, but without capitalizing it. So if you just want to hit that key, you'll get the circumflex, and we'll talk about the use of the circumflex in a moment. Those are your three basic accents. A smooth breather is right here under the 8, the capitalizing of the 8. The rough breather, kind of a reverse apostrophe, is the capitalization of the 7. Sometimes they come together in combinations, and so you want to notice that if you have a smooth breather with the acute accent, it's going to be the capitalized 1. If it's the rough breather with the acute accent, it's capitalized 2. Smooth breather with the grav accent is 3. Rough breather with the grav accent is 4. The rough breather with a circumflex is right here under capitalized 5, and the smooth breather with a circumflex here with 6. And so those are the accents that you'll be paying attention to. What you want to do is just practice using these, and in fact in the exercises I'll give you a chance to kind of practice on this a little bit. So for now, just make a note of where these various keys are on the keyboard, and just go ahead and try practicing on a blank Word document or something like that, just to kind of get a feel for them. You'll find that if you are a typist anyway, that you'll get pretty quickly get some facility with using the Greek keyboard. All right, let's look at the next page of this chapter. This is page 10. The reminder here from Machen that you're advised to learn the small letters thoroughly in connection with this first lesson, but leave the capital letters for later. And he also mentions here that you should learn good penmanship, which I will simply emphasize as well. There are certain vowels in the Greek language that are always short, some that are always long, some can be both. So you'll notice here the alpha can be both short or long. The epsilon is always short. The long of epsilon is considered to be eta. Omicron is always short. Omega is considered to be the long of it. Iota can be short or long. If it's short, it's usually pronounced I. If it's long, it's pronounced E, although you'll find that I'm a little fluid in applying that rule, and so you'll have to keep an eye on that as well. Upsilon can be either long or short, but is typically pronounced with that U sound either way. The reason it's important to know the short and long vowels is because when we get to accenting Greek words, which is something we'll be doing quite a bit of, then you want to be sure to understand that, because it does influence the way that words are accented rather dramatically, depending on whether the vowels are long or short. So for now, just trust me, just take it by faith. You should learn the vowels, and you should learn the long and short form of each of the vowels. Down here at the bottom, Machen introduces diphthongs. And the discussion continues, of course, on page 11. So again, I just want to emphasize it's quite important to learn these diphthongs. I know at this beginning stage of your studies, this may seem like the last thing you were really expecting, but these are all part of the fundamentals of the Greek language, and especially the Greek alphabet. And so go ahead and spend a little time to get a feel for these. It'll actually make a little more sense as we go along, but for now it'll be helpful if you spend a little bit of time getting a feel for these. The first diphthong is alpha iota. It's pronounced I as in isle. Epsilon iota is pronounced A as in fate. Omicron iota is pronounced oi as in oil. Alpha upsilon is pronounced ow as in cow. Epsilon upsilon is pronounced as u as in feud, whereas Omicron upsilon is pronounced oo as in food, and finally upsilon iota is pronounced we as in queen. And I'll try to observe that rule pretty consistently as we go along. Whenever you have the iota uniting with a long alpha or eta or omega, notice those are all three long vowels, then the iota actually becomes what's called an iota subscript, and this is an illustration of it. When we were looking at the keyboard, I mentioned to you where you could find the iota subscript. It's down there by the comma, and so that's the way you'll want to do it, and that's a common usage in the New Testament and in the Greek alphabet. Each Greek word that begins with a vowel or a diphthong has what's called a breathing at the beginning. There are two breathers. One is called the rough breather, one is called the smooth breather. A rough breather looks like a backwards apostrophe. A smooth breather looks like a regular apostrophe. The regular apostrophe as a breather has no effect on pronunciation. So for example, this word would be pronounced N. However, if you have a rough breather at the beginning, such as you find here, then it is as if you put an H at the beginning of the word, so it's pronounced with an H sound. So this particular diphthong would be pronounced who, with an H sound at the beginning. He also notes here that there are 3 accents. I've already commented on those in connection with the keyboard. We have the acute accent, the grave accent, which simply leans the other way, and the circumflex, which was actually originally a combination of an acute and a grave, but it looks like this kind of semicircular affair there. The main thing to notice about the accent is that you're simply going to accent the syllable where you find the accent. We're not going to try to distinguish in pronunciation among these 3, although the ancient Greeks presumably did. But we're simply going to say if you find the accent on a syllable, then emphasize that syllable. And that's as much as we need to know about accents, except, of course, how they're going to apply in various words. The last thing we're going to notice is punctuation. Again, I've already commented on this briefly. There's the comma, which functions exactly like an English language comma. There's the period, which is similar to our period, has the same effect, ends a sentence. The dot above the line is the colon, so that's a little different from our English usage, but it functions as a colon. And then the semicolon here is the question mark, and so a little bit of a difference in punctuation, but otherwise shouldn't be too difficult to master. For the exercises in this chapter, of course, Machen simply suggests that you find some Greek text later in the chapter and simply try to pronounce it. It may be a little difficult at this point to do it, but I thought I'd give you a hand, and so let's take a look at an example just to give you a basis on starting this particular part of your thought. So I've skipped ahead now to page 27, and I'm simply doing this so you can see a little bit more of a typical example of some Greek language here. So let's just take a look at some of these. I'm going to give you a moment to try to sound out this first sentence here. So we're starting with number 1, and I want you to try to pronounce that word as best you can. And if you came up with something like adelphos, adelphos, you see smooth breather on the alpha. Alpha makes an ah sound, ah, del. The epsilon sounds like e as in get, adel. Omicron makes an o sound, adelphos. Notice the sigma at the end is that special form of the sigma that completes a word. How about this word? Try that one. So if you came up with blepe, that's good. Beta, lambda makes an L sound. As in get. Remember the epsilon iota sounds like A as in way, so it's going to be blepe. Let's try this last word here. So if you came up with anthropone, notice the accent is on the first syllable. Makes a long A, anthro, with the omega, anthropone is the word for man, actually. Okay, let's try a couple more. How about this? Let's try these 3 words together now. Just give an attempt at that. So what'd you come up with? This should be doulos graphe logus. Doulos graphe logus. And how about number 3? How about here, apostoloi didaskusin anthropon. So, hopefully that'll get you going. You should go ahead and work through the rest of these as best you can. Apostoloi, luusi, doulos, doulos, lambane, dora, lambanusen, huioi, oikus, doulos, kai, oikus, lambanusen, adelphoi, and so on. I think you can take it from there. And it is a good idea to practice this a little bit. Of course, there's no way I can evaluate you on this, but just for your sense of competence with the language, it's very helpful to work through some of these types of exercises. Well, hopefully that gets you going in your studies of this first chapter. Again, if you have the textbook, then that will help a lot. If you don't, then I heartily recommend that you make that your first order of business. go ahead and go through the lesson. You know, I have an introductory comment. There is this video, of course. There's a quiz that you'll take, and all of these are, of course, going to be helpful to you. But in any event, welcome aboard. I hope this turns out to be an exciting and enjoyable adventure for you. And I look forward to our next time together. And until then, my deep hope and prayer is that God will richly bless your beginning studies in the Greek language.